The United States Census Bureau released its latest survey this week, Income, Poverty, and Health Insurance Coverage in the United States. It revealed that median household income declined. The poverty rate was not different from the previous year, but did not go up as it has since the start of the Great Recession. The numbers of those classified by the government as poor remain at record highs, while the gap between the rich and everyone else widened further. It's a grim story that hasn't received much media coverage. That's why we're here talking about it. Joining me to talk about poverty in America is Lisa Sharon Harper, Director of Mobilizing at Sojourners, and Marisol Bello, a reporter for USA Today. All right, folks, let's get right into it. Marisol, we talk about the fact that almost 20% of the folks, Black Americans, live in poverty.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's actually higher than 20%. It's 27% of African Americans live in poverty. Something like 25% of Hispanics live in poverty. And compare that to the number of whites in poverty, it's 10%. So even though you have the whole number, you have more whites in poverty.
Right.
But still, when you're talking about such large numbers of Hispanics and blacks in poverty, and it has continued to go up, it's definitely a concern. But a lot of the areas where poverty would stop or be helped for African Americans and for Hispanics, jobs, public sector jobs, teachers, firefighters, police, all those jobs folks are getting laid off in those positions. So it's become difficult for people to pull themselves out.
So many folks focus on, obviously, the poverty rate. Folks who did talk about this week talked about the issue of poverty, but also it's this widening gap between the haves and the have-nots. That, to me, speaks volumes, because we hear so much about the middle class, the middle class, the middle class. You hear less about poor in this country. But when you talk about poor and middle class, the rich are getting so much better, everyone else falling behind.
Yeah, income inequality is actually a big issue, and it has been an issue for a while. And what's been happening is, obviously, that 1%, their income has been growing, their wealth has been growing. On the poverty side, obviously, more people are becoming poor. And then what's happening is that your middle class is getting squeezed. And so, again, it's the old standbys that people keep talking about: education, jobs. I mean, those are really the two things that really, at the heart, can help improve any of these things.
Lisa, does it drive you crazy when all you hear from both candidates in the campaigns, middle class, middle class, middle class, middle class, middle class, as if nobody else exists, as if there are no voters who are not middle class?
Yes, it does drive me crazy, Roland. I mean, I think when you really think about it, the reality is that the middle class has shrunk, and the reason why it shrunk is because so many different resources are going towards the top, and so many resources for the bottom are being cut, and so that the bottom is falling out. What we have here, I love the fact that you showed the candidates' videos that were given for the Circle. They actually answered the call for the Circle of Protection. Up until about 3 days ago, I would have given the campaigns about an F in terms of their talking about the issue of poverty, mentioning the poor, and actually dealing with it in terms of legislation and policy. And actually, the media are not far behind. The media also have, thank God for you. You are talking about it. But fairness in reporting and accuracy in reporting. They did a recent report where they showed that there were, this year, out of 10,000 articles about and reports about the campaigns, only 10 had any substantial mention of poverty. So as if you're going to do a scorecard or a report card, Matthew 25, being the measure of that report card, I would say that right now America is right about a D+ and maybe even an F.
Marisol, what have you seen that has worked in order for us to decrease the poverty rate? Because talking about it is one thing, but trying to lower it is something totally different.
Food stamps.
Yes.
Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. One of the interesting things is when you look at not just in the recession, but look at what's been happening. Look at what's been happening long term with poverty. You had back in the 1980s higher percentages of seniors that were poorer than they are now. Now the poverty rate for seniors is 9%. Go back to the 1980s to now, It's flipped with seniors and children. So before you had seniors, high percentages of seniors that were in poverty. Today, that's gone down. Before, low percentages of kids in poverty. Today, it's 22%. But what's helped seniors? What's really helped seniors is Social Security and Medicare.
Lisa, what do you want to hear these candidates say specifically, President Obama and Mitt Romney, when it comes to poverty?
It would be a dream, and actually I really believe that we need to move in this direction, if the candidates would say what President Johnson said and had the courage to say back in the 1960s. It is not right, and it will never be right, whenever we have a situation where 15% of all Americans are in poverty and almost, actually more than half of any segment of our society is in poverty. It's not right that we have 16 million children in poverty right now. That's not right. And so as Americans, if we're going to have a war, let's have a war on poverty. Let's get back to that. We got away from that. We had a war on poverty in the 1960s, and when we did that, we cut the poverty rate in America in half in less than a decade. But we got off track, and we began to have a war on drugs that became a war on African Americans, on our black communities. And we lost our focus, and since then, the poverty rate in the African American community has climbed and climbed and climbed until now we are at 27%, which isn't very far from where we were at the end of that war on poverty. So that's what I would love to see. President Obama, Romney, if you win, declare a war on poverty and let's do this thing.
And I say don't wait till after the election.
Hey.
They can bring it up in one of those three presidential debates. Lisa,
Yeah.
Marisol, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.